Mr. Shepherd? Mr. Vonderhaar?
Here.
Ms. Longenecker?
Here.
Ms. Snyder?
Here. Thank you. And we have a quorum. And our next item of business is the approval of the prior meeting's minutes, and those had been sent to you electronically. Hopefully you've had a chance to look over those. Are there any corrections, changes, additions? If not, could I have a motion to approve them?
I'll move.
Mr. Schwartz moves. Second.
I'll second.
Mr. Vonderhaar. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay. In front of you, you have materials, financial materials, and Anna Mary Thomas is going to be covering those with us today. So I will go ahead and turn that over to you.
Okay, so we have our normal packet. It's binder clipped on your tables. It has handout 1, which is the statement of cash position, should be your first one that you have in front of you. On here, it shows the balances at the end of September. We did close October, but that just happened yesterday, and they're reconciling, so we only present reconciled information at the commission meetings. At the end of September, the general fund did have a positive balance. In August, they received their second tax settlement sheet, which we'll get into in the revenue side. So that was the last, they get 2. That was the last one for it. So there's a bump up in the balances from that. There are going to be some refunds going out for income tax soon. There is a fairly large and decent one that's going to happen within the next month due to a loss by a business. The city and the departments are working through their purchase orders and needs through the rest of the year. So that's being cleaned up and seeing what needs to be purchased. And then they also have payrolls to finish out the year. They're also looking at capital needs throughout the city as well, as they also progress to do a capital budget in finance and council. The only other fund that I wanted to point out is the bottom of the page, which is the water fund. It is still negative. We have asked, and they have performed some cash analysis down in the city auditor's office for several years back. We're trying to look through those to see what is causing or a potential cause of the negative fund balance in that fund. That's all I have on handout A. Handout B is the revenue side of the world. Again, this only goes through September. As I just talked about in the general fund, property taxes did come in higher than projected in the recovery plan. We couldn't get a good estimate from the county as they were going through a reassessment year, but it did come in higher, and they have received in full their property tax. Income tax is around target, which is around 75%, so it's holding its own. We have several that are over what have been projected. Intergovernmental right now is charge services, fees, license, and permits, and then other. Ones that I want to point out, the charges for services, it would be up at this time. Recreation is a big collection point for charges for services, and most of their collection points are during the summer months. So that would make sense. The building department is drastically higher this year. It's even higher than the highest of the last 3 years on their permits that have been done. So it's an anomaly year this year that they're just having more.
Did they ever go back and look at the fees they're charging about potentially increasing them, or?
Not that I know of. But Mayor, do you know of?
No.
Put that on our to-do list for council, for sure.
Yeah, it's in line with everybody else. Okay.
The other one, I know it's very small, it's had a large increase, and we're going to talk about that when we get to reconciliation as well. The city has placed a considerable amount of money into the Star Ohio program, and they have earned some interest from that, and they typically don't earn interest, so that has been a windfall, and that was around $12,000, I believe, for a very short period of time, and they still have monies in Star Ohio and should through the rest of the year. So I wanted to point that out.
And that's in the, what
Other.
category, other?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is that the program through the treasurer's office?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And it's the Star Ohio, not the Star Ohio Plus that they're using. The street construction and state highways, they are both on target for their revenue collections. The street construction's a little higher due to some fees, license, and permits that they had gotten that wasn't originally figured into the plan. Okay. Any questions on the revenues? Handout C is the expenditure side of the world. As you can see, 75% is the target at the end of September. They need to be at that target or below being better. We have several departments that are below. A lot of that is due to personnel was not hired either by the time that it was projected or has not been hired to date or at the levels that they're at, not at the levels that was expected for the year. I'm going to go over some of the ones that are exceeding, which would be the first one on page 3, which is the fire department at the top. They have had more overtime than what was originally projected. They've also, their buybacks from leave balances, sick, holiday, and then comp was higher than projected when the recovery plan was put together. The street section is exceeding at this time. The street lighting expenses are tracking higher than it has been expected and what we saw in past years. Down at the bottom is Parks Playgrounds Department. Most of these expenditures we have seen. Most of the work will be concluding in that area, so you'll start seeing that come back in line by the end of December. Page 4, you have the 911 at the top. They had a radio debt lease that is paid through this department, which was over $70,000. That's a big reason for the exceeds at the moment. That should also come back in line. The health department is slightly exceeding. We're watching it. They had some unexpected refunds that went out. Recreation department is coming back in line. Most of their expenditures are seen in the summer months because of the pool. If you would look back at our other commission meetings, the percentage it was over was higher, and it's now working its way through. Then we get to D-Track non-department at the bottom. There's going to be this and several ones on the next page. Those are coming from the county tax settlement deductions because they have to post property taxes at gross, and then there's deductions that come from the county auditor that has to be posted expenditures. Those expenditures are done. They were higher than estimated, but also the revenues were higher than estimated, so those times go hand in hand. Workers' compensation, non-department, that's really legal fees for workers' comp claims. We'll be working to move those into the legal section, outstanding legal fees, non-department. Page 5, state examiner fees. This is really their audit fees for their annual audit that has to be done. That's been concluded. They have one more payment to make on it. The city auditor or the county auditor treasurer fees, the election expense, the real estate tax, those are all also coming from the county tax settlement sheets as well as deductions. Those are completed and they were higher than expected, but there will be no more expenditures coming out of those. The outside legal fees, that is higher than estimated. That has a lot to do with the union negotiations that have been going on with the openers to 2018 and going through fact-finding, arbitration, and even conciliation. The insurance non-department, we've talked about it before. It's all paid up in the front of the year. There's no more expenditures to come out of that one. So it won't go over what was planned for. It just looks like it's exceeding because we're in the 9th month, but the whole thing's been paid. Page 6 to 7, that is also debt payments. There's only one interest payment left to make on that. Any questions on the general fund?
What did you say about the real estate tax non-department?
It's also coming from the county highway, or the county auditor's office from the county settlement sheets.
So is that going to remain over budget at the end of the year?
Well, appropriations will be moved to handle that, but yes. And a lot of that has to do with, there were more revenues that came in, so there's more fees to pay out. Any other questions on the general fund?
Did we talk about, oh, never mind. We're good.
Okay. The last page is the street and state highway. The street fund is where it needs to be. The state highway, there was a prior year payment that was done there, and we're working with the city auditor's office to move that to a different fund. That's a street fund as well. So, any other questions on the expenditures? Handout D is just the bank reconciliation that we present at the end of September. You can see all the adjustments to the banks. The big thing I wanted to point out was the 2 new Star Ohio accounts that they have and the amount of monies that were sitting there at the end of September. Any questions on that?
Is the reconciliation item still stagnant, still the same? I don't remember what the amount was at the last
It
time.
used to be 10.
I
Yeah.
thought it was in the tens.
Yes.
We're making some
The
progress.
city treasurer's office has been going through a lot of it and going back and finding issues and fixing things as they go. Our office hasn't been able to work on that a lot in the last couple of months as we're working on other things. But yes, they have reduced that.
Thank you.
Yes. That's all I have for those handouts.
Can you walk us through how the end of the year is going to go for Norwood and what the commission will need to do? You and April will be looking at the appropriations and council will need to make adjustments to reconcile.
They have presented changes to the appropriations like they have throughout the year. That has to stay within lines of the total of the financial report. We're doing analysis over those, and we've been talking to many of the departments on what the needs are, what purchase orders can be closed, what will they be asking for. I believe the city auditor's office has requested that no more purchase orders be done by a certain date. I think this week, they can speak to that more than I can. Unless it's an emergency or something that needs to be done, so they have an idea of what will be coming through their office downstairs and going and closing out the year. So we look through those to make sure that they're appropriate within the confines of the financial plan and before they move forward for approval at the city council. And then they've been working on their 2019 appropriations. I've been sent a draft of those to look at as well.
And I think the plan is to just do the appropriations that are in line with the financial recovery plan,
Yes, we're going to have some
with
discussions on
some
that. Yeah.
slight changes on that.
Right, you're going to have to make some
Yes.
changes, but
And I don't know whether this will fit in or not, but as far as, I'll cover some other issues, but as far as our negotiations go, one of the things we probably, if it's possible to do it or not, is tell us the numbers we've got to work with. So we can gear that in operation of those numbers. Because as you know, we have the city basically under 4117. It's all independently decided through arbitrators and fact finders and everybody else. So if we have a number that's given to us to give to our individuals who are doing the bargaining, we'll have a number to work with.
we have a 5-year plan.
Yeah, but I understand that, but we need numbers to work with for, there's talking about insurance all the time and how much, the people don't pay anything for insurance. Give us some numbers to work with. I mean, the police department is down. I think we would probably be in a lot worse shape financially, but because the police department was so short for a long time, part of the plan was to bring them up to 45. And we've almost completed that. They just hired 6. 2 or 3 weeks ago, I talked to the chief, they're gonna hire 2 more, which brings them up to 45. But throughout the year, they were short. And so, not being an auditor, it would seem to me that shortage moves towards lessening our debt towards the end of the year. And I guess what we would like to see, our people would like to see is numbers to work with.
Isn't that what this plan is?
Well, the plan has what council approved and that what the levels are going forward, yes.
But
Those numbers are there in that respect.
But that's for 45. It doesn't count, the pay, the insurance, the benefits, and everything else that goes along with it. For example, if it takes 10 million or 6 million or so for each police and fire and 2 million for public works, what's the ground rule? What funds do we have to work with or knowledge of so we can use that for negotiations? Because if we don't have a number and we don't shoot for a number, then it could be a problem, because once again it's out of our control a lot of times due to the state law. So I talking to one of the individuals this morning, it would be nice to have a number to work with.
We can highlight for you what has been approved by this commission and by the council so that you can see where we are today. So we're not going to do that.
I need a number besides that. Our operation is not just more than 45 people. It's everything. It's cars, it's personnel, it's everything. How much is we allocated for the budget to work with in order for us to use negotiations? And if you can't do it, you can't do it. Because I'm going to ask council the same thing.
Well, the only thing that I can say to the plan is that the numbers that were projected and then reduction down at the bottom for personnel, fire, and police, there is benefits included in what would be paid out for personnel. What the plan does not include at the moment, though, is capital improvements, and we've discussed that before. That's not only in the street departments, which are to be worked on in the street funds, but also the needs across the city. So, like, a great example is your roof here. If anybody wants to take a walk, the roof, the plaster is falling over there. That can be a hazard, as something that needs to be looked at. So when the departments were asked for budgets this time, we had asked that they also provide capital needs, meaning vehicles, equipment, looking at buildings and things like that. That has to be also looked at and built upon in the future recovery plans as well, because those are also needs that need to be taken care of. And right now, a lot of those are not built in. Like computers were built in for 2018, a couple going out in future years, but that's only computers. But major repairs and major vehicles, other than the few that have been approved, like one ambulance was approved, and it's in the recovery plan. We had one police cruiser, and that was approved. I mean, in the next 5 years, those are needs that needs to be looked at and also placed in the plan for you to even look at coming out once you're solvent. So those are needs that need to be looked at as well.
I understand, like for the number 45 for the police and fire came from the council as part of the plan and was approved by this and as you know, you've had the pleasure, I'm sure it was a pleasure of you, for sitting in on the mediation and the fact finding. And there's where the conflict is. We're trying to follow the plan. We're following a plan that was given by council and approved by this commission. That's where the rub is. That's where the problems start. It starts in the negotiations where we're saying that we're honoring and following the plan that was submitted by council and this commission. The problem of it is, sometimes when you get into those here, they don't care. This independent individual comes from somewhere else in the country, doesn't care about your plan. And so it helps us And it doesn't mean anything. They just rule against you if they choose to do so. So along with the plan, I was just hoping for some numbers, like if it's so many millions for the police department employee costs, so many millions for the fire department, so many millions for the public works, to give us a number, and if you can't, you can't, to help send us down the path. This is the number we've got to work with, and that's the number we shoot for. See what I'm saying? That's the goal.
Why would that number be different than what's been budgeted?
Well, because it can change. In other words, if you say, I want to cut back on this benefit, I want to cut back on that benefit, then you transfer that in the cost. That's the cost we've got to work with. And that's the cost that we can use for our negotiations. Because as it's going now, is I think the impression is throughout the city that Joe Gears and myself and are just arbitrarily deciding that's what we want. Well, actually what we're doing is following what the plan was. So if we're given a number to work with, this is the number we've got to work with. And you know, it's like anything else. That's the number you've got to work with. We'll make it work. Or it supports us to help make it work in order to reduce our costs.
Well, we can, I mean, this is, of course, this has been approved by any number of people, and should the city not be able to comply and have a 5-year forecast, then you do set forth a process where the entity would have an automatic reduction and live at an 85% spending level of the month from a year ago. So those are, you're in a difficult situation, which I appreciate, but that's what you have to
And
realize.
I could not agree with you more. But the problem of it is that 85%, operating on 85%, nobody believes that'll happen. I was telling you, they don't think it'll happen. But what can, if we go to an arbitrator, if we go in front of an arbitrator and say, we can't afford this, we can't afford this, we need this, we need this, and we say to the arbitrator, well, if we fall below this, they're going to cut our budget by 15% and make us operate on 85%. They don't seem to care. This is the umbrella that we have to work under because of 4117 and 138. It's that constant conflict, and I know nobody in this room can change that. It's just it would be helpful if we had the guidance and the support on the numbers. And you bring up, I never even thought about that. You bring up a very valuable point on that 85%. And somewhere down the road, we're going to have to look at that, because right now,
Well, if you can stay within your plan, you won't need to go to that. But I will say that is a reality for other communities.
and I couldn't agree more, but we can stay within our plan, and an independent individual from Nyack, New York can come in and say, I don't care about your plan. And then if somebody rules against us, then we're forced into, see what I'm getting at? We're forced into operating on 85% of last year.
Well, I don't think you can base a plan on what you think someone's going to do or what they're going to say. A plan is a plan, and it's based on how much money you have. And if they want to take that road, let them, and they'll end up where she's talking about.
They won't end up there. The one individual making the decision won't end up there. We'll end up there. But I appreciate the support. But anything that we can do to supply the numbers for the negotiation team to work with would be deeply appreciated.
So do you need, so obviously council and everybody prepared the budget based on numbers, so you need the breakout of what that was. I would think we shoot for that in our negotiations. If it ends up somewhere else, then we obviously got to adjust something, but is that what you're asking for?
Sure.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
exactly, okay,
Yeah.
here's the number we've got to work with. Okay, for this department, we've got this. For that department, we've got that. Here's the number you've got to work with. Thank you. So now we know when we go into negotiations, we'll have a number to work with.
Okay.
And internally, whose position is it to do that, to do the number crunching? And is there the finance team, or I would think there'd be internal folks that would be responsible for preparing that.
Well, that's a really good question. Up until this point, the finance committee, the auditor, would be involved in the discussions. Any of our finance people that we can get to put input would be good. So we know a number. So we got a number to work with, but up until recently, it hasn't. We have had very little success with some of these arbitrator and fact finder. One we couldn't keep awake. There's just been issues. And like I've said 100 times, the bargaining units, their job is to do what they can for their members. Our job is to try to keep us from going under. And that, you raised a valid point on what can happen down the road. And that's what we're trying to do, is get a number that we can work with. Then when we go to a bargaining unit, this comes from council, this comes from the Financial Planning Commission, that this is the number we've got to work with. If you, for example, in your businesses, you got separate portions of your business, they have their budget, that's how much they've got to work with. Mm-hmm. And if you go over that, then you better, we want to know why. And so this is the same premise that I'm, after talking to our people that do this, that's what we're looking at.
So is the auditor and the financial director able to work on that and prepare that?
I would like support from the, I'm going to address the city, but I would also, this commission has to approve most everything, so it would be nice if it could go from the city finance committee and the auditor's office to this commission, and not only for a 5-year plan, which I totally understand, but even for like next year. For budgeting for next year to give us some direction to work off of.
I mean, we should already have that
We
information.
do.
It's already built in,
it's
so
right
it's just
here.
a matter of pulling out the pieces that he needs. I'm making the number up, hey, it's $10 million.
Yeah.
It's made up of these 3
Our
buckets.
plan has it has bottom lines for the various
Okay.
areas. And it has it within even, it's detailed within that.
Yeah,
So I think
that would
this
give
is
him what he
what
needs.
perhaps we'll make
But,
sure.
yeah.
We appreciate that. Now, and just like before, you've had issues over insurance, and rightfully so. Now, that's a negotiated item, and that's the kind of stuff that we need those numbers
Yeah.
to say.
You gotta know where you're negotiating for.
Right.
Yeah, no.
And-
Yeah,
and-
we have that, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, if somebody can help us with those numbers,
we'll make sure you have
and so we can supply it.
Yeah.
That way, the bargaining units and everybody knows the numbers. It's not like we're hiding anything. The bargaining units have the numbers, and the big thing is for them to trust those numbers. And so I trust them, right, Marcus? But we need to transmit that out so everybody is sort of in agreement, and I hate the term transparency. So we're all above working on information that's supplied by not only the council, but this commission. I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah, we've got that, and we'll
right.
forward it, make sure you have it, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then the
Okay.
financial plan's public record too. So, I mean,
Absolutely.
it's all there, but
It's
if you
totally-
need bifurcate it out into the buckets that you need, then I'm sure the state can
Right,
obviously do that for you.
yep. So we'll do that. Any update on the report on accounting methods at this point?
Where staff is finishing up sections, the city, different departments will be getting narratives to review of just the processes to make sure that we haven't missed anything. And then the report will go through a process as well. So I have no timelines at this time.
Okay. Number 5 on our agenda is the dispatch center. And again, Anna Mary, I'll have you run us through, she prepared an analysis for us with the various options that the city has considered, and we can look at the numbers on those.
Okay, so there's a long piece of paper in front of you. It's got 010940 department. It's got the 2017 dispatch numbers. It's got the estimated for 2018. It's got a county option, and then the 2019 dispatch estimate with a new lease. So Mr. Rankin was one of the ones here, Lieutenant Rankin, that worked on the original numbers, and then our office did some analysis over those, and that's what's being presented. It's more of the more detailed analysis that our office did over what he presented to us. There's two funds that you have to look at when you're looking at dispatch. There is a department under the general fund, which is the 0940, which we talk about when we go through our expenditure report. But there also is a Fund 31, which is the wireless 911. That is a separate fund because it gets restricted monies to be used for 911 purposes. It comes in from the state and has to be put there. One of the things you have to know is that if they do not do 911 here at the city themselves, Fund 31 would go away. They would not get those revenues. It would go to whoever, if they would contract with somebody, it would go with that contracted entity. So that's one thing you should know up front. Fund 31 also has a balance as well. That was not put in here because once it would be spent, it would be gone. As you can see, there's personnel costs that they have at this time for running it, and there's contractual and things. They also have computer replacement, and they have headsets, and there's other things that they pay for to have the service. In talking with them and looking at it, there is one service that from Cincinnati Bell that was really being paid out of another department in the general fund, but it's still a part of expenses of 911. So I've tried to pull all those in to make sure we capture what are true expenditures, true revenues for this department. As you come across, they're running the department. The 2018 is more of an updated where they will be by the end of the year between the two funds. And I kind of net out at the bottom the revenues that they're coming in so you can see a net effect. The third place is where we start talking about the third and fourth columns here are what we're really discussing today. In the recovery plan, it says that the city would look at 911. One of the options would be going to a county. They would still want personnel here to man the phones. There's certain costs that you'll see will go away if they would go with the county. And then down below, you'll see there's a potential cost based on the estimated calls and what the county would charge for that, which is around $414,000. Now, with that, I talked to the county myself. They charged $15 a call in 2018. The director there said that the cost is going up in 2019, and he was unsure what that would be. He said it could be $1 to $5 per call. They did not know. And he said it really probably would be $2, and we moved it to $1. So this is a low estimate on what the county would charge per call. So it's based on numbers that Lieutenant Rankin gave us for the number of calls, which was a low estimate from what he has described to me, based then against the $16 per call, and that is an estimate on the cost. Now, you can see the bottom line is around $960,000. However, there's also another potential cost to the city if they go with the county. They may have to do a new CAT system because the one that they have is different from what the county's is. So for them to talk back and forth, or they'd have to do something else, there is potential they'd have to purchase new equipment, and I do not have those costs on what that would be. The fourth column is if they would keep it in-house as is. We increased the personnel cost just like the recovery plan states with the 15% in insurance. So that's still estimated in here whether it will be 15% or not. They still have radios that they have dead on no matter if they go to the county, stays here. That's why those are there. They would have reduced cost on repairs and maintenance because the new lease that they would go with would cover some of those costs in the next 5 years, as long as it's not like they rolled over something and they shut like a headset. If they did that, then the city would have to pay for it themselves. But if it's normal wear and tear, the city would then, through this lease, get those things. And Mr. Rankin can speak to that better than I can. This lease would cover 7 years, and it covers maintenance, equipment. It would be around $31,000 a year. Then they would still get their funding through Fund 31, which could also be used for 911 services, and you'll see the bottom line of what the cost will be for that. It is if you compare right now, less than what the county option is. They have to change because right now they're with Cincinnati Bell, and he can talk about that better than I can, and they're cutting the services off on January 31st, correct?
We are the last ones on the system.
Yeah.
They would like to cut it yesterday, but as of January 31st, it's gone.
Yes, so these are the numbers that I went through. I have called the county. I've made sure we knew what the estimate could possibly be for the cost, and we even went low with that with the dollar instead of $2 increase on the $15 per call. That's what I know. That's what I'm presenting to you. If you have any more questions over the 911, we've asked Melissa asked Mr. Rankin to be here to answer those. So.
Just maybe a general stupid question. Who's the lease with? Like, how's that?
The lease would be with
In digital?
and Digital is the company you're going with. The lease would be with Government Capital.
So is that different than?
It's a cloud-based system, so it's not, we don't have the hardware and all that
Okay.
stuff here. The hardware is kept off-site
So do we have
at
a-
another place.
Do we currently have a lease with somebody, or is this something a new
Well,
option?
since
How does
that
it
bell.
work now, I guess?
But we got, can you speak to what Lieutenant Rankin about the cutoff date? That if we don't have a new system in place by a certain date, Cincinnati Bell will report us to the 911 committee and they'll choose a system for us. What is that date?
Currently, we pay Cincinnati Bell a service.
Do you want to come up here so people can hear you?
Currently, we pay Cincinnati Bell a service and maintenance program. It's right around $17,000 a year for the 911 system. Some of the costs that we're also upgrading when Cincinnati Bell cancels their system, they're getting out of that particular part of the phone 911 program. So when January 31st is their absolute last date that they want to operate the system. You can imagine if they have a system going for 15, 20 different PSAPs and everybody's gone but us, they're really looking forward to getting us off the system because now their cost is no longer effective for them. So, but January 31st, they will throw the switch. If we're not up and running by then, they will transfer our calls to the county automatically.
Okay, so we have people, and this is, we have our own employees right now, and then we are just using Cincinnati Bell as the system, basically, to dispatch calls and everything else. Is that right? No?
People dial
Okay.
911, the program, the software and hardware that when you dial 911 from your cell phone or home phone, as that call comes in, Cincinnati Bell initiates the process of figuring out where it should go. They route those calls to us.
Okay.
So they're actually handling, they'll still handle that part of it.
Okay,
But the part where it actually, our 911 software program is through Cincinnati Bell.
okay,
And Digital would handle the software part of it. The Cincinnati Bell's still going to have the phone lines that the 911 calls will come into.
Okay.
It's just they'll go into a new system.
okay.
So part of that $31,000 we're talking about includes the $17,000 we're paying Cincinnati Bell now. The support and maintenance is much less, but we got to buy some backroom equipment. Not a lot, but we got to buy some.
And that's
So-
in this estimate?
Yes, it's all inclusive. All the support, the maintenance, the equipment, the software, everything's included. And we did add a couple other things in there to meet PSAP requirements. We updated our mapping system. Mapping system is basically, if you call 911, it uses the cell towers to tell us where you're calling from, a range. If you got kids and use the little tracking app, but it's very much the same thing, that GIS software. Well, we want to update that software to what I consider to be some of the best software out there. And that's included in this program. Now, so that's about a $3,000 cost per year for the current system we have, the software. It fails a lot, so we want to update that. So that cost is now removed from the current budget and put into the new $31,000 budget.
And that's all through that lease with the...
It's all
the new-
inclusive
okay.
in that lease.
Okay.
So I might have got off track, so I don't...
No, that's all right. Go
Does
ahead.
that kind of...
Yeah, I just didn't know exactly how it worked and what's changing. So,
Essentially, it's like you have a TV to watch your favorite shows, where you're going to a Samsung instead of a RCA.
Yeah.
It's all the same setup. It's just we're using a different vendor.
okay.
And when you switch vendors, we have to buy some new equipment, which then that
Yeah.
extends our maintenance cost out a little bit because it's all brand new equipment. as well as the fact that part of the purchase includes software and support, the support and maintenance of the program itself.
Okay. So it seems like, okay, so outside of that, is there anything like any kind of capital expenditures that we would have to bear? So if we stayed with our 911 service, is there any CapEx type things that haven't been included in this? So we have this service provider that's going to route all the calls to us based on how, where we are and whatnot, but then I assume we have our own personnel who are actually going to dispatch EMS or fire or police or whomever. Is there any upgrades that need to be done at some point in time to our equipment that we own and operate that's not included in this budget?
The only thing I get, and I just sent an email to some folks in the city. We had a company come out and take a look on what kind of lines, because they have to run some computer lines to put the new system in. The only thing is there might be some very minor costs, and I don't know, that might be, we need this connection thing to make sure that this system works with this. Could there be some very minor stuff come through when we find out, when we're putting this in the back room, I got to buy another rack for a tree put the equipment on. I don't know. It could be some very minor costs, but I think we've covered everything as far as the equipment switchover. And I don't expect really to have anything come through that's any substantial.
I guess what I'm trying to get to is, like, right now, obviously, it looks like it's cheaper. But then are we considering, hey, 2 years from now, we enter in this 7-year lease, but 2 years from now, we may have $200,000-$400,000 worth of expense that, because we have this old equipment that needs to be updated at some point in time. We talked about the county updating their systems. Is there a certain type of, would we have to do that at some point in the near future? Or are we in good shape now?
That's kind of what we're doing now.
Okay, understood.
With Rave 911, the digital software, the new mapping program, the text to 911, it's all
Okay.
the part of this thing. There's not a lot more you need to update. Now, technology changes every day. You buy a $2,000 laptop today, next year it's obsolete. So I don't know what's coming down the pipe 5-10 years from now.
Sure.
What I do know is, like we talked about, we did in the budget, it says $1 upgrade from the county. We talked about a potential $2. I think it was the county commissioner that sent out a report that recommended $3. The county's $29,000 in debt. That's got to come from somewhere.
Million.
I'm sorry. Yes. To me, 29,000 is a lot. 29 million. So my personal belief is that it will be the 3, at least. I don't know, but the county director of their piece of doesn't really know either.
Yeah.
But so those costs are fluctual. Things that we can't factor in is some other calls that come in to Norwood that would be a billable item if we were to switch. We know that the number is low of our
So
switch.
in our county option, we're being conservative and putting a dollar increase where it could be higher. If that's the case, then that 961 could be over $1 million or whatever. Okay, all right, understood.
I can tell you that currently it's cost ineffective for us. It's in our best interest financially to keep the piece up. I don't know what that looks like 10 years from now.
Sure, I understand. And Mayor, you said in the past, we perform a better level of service than the county probably would. They could response time.
Well, we got Andy Knapp who's the greatest guy in the world. It's not that we provide a greater service. They got a really fine organization out there. It wasn't a slap on them. What I'm saying is our dispatchers know where everything's at in our city. If you call them and you say it's Wendy's, they know where Wendy's is at. Plus, if you have an overwhelming demand for 911, a line of storms or, a weather event of any kind or this, we will become one of 41 other departments, cities trying to communicate with 911. Where ours, it's just our 911. You see what I mean?
Yes.
So by sheer volume, that's what I meant by that. It's by no means. Andy is doing a really great job. And the other thing I believe that I think down the road, something we could come to some sort of a mutual thing with the county that would benefit the both of us. And so having it that way would be beneficial. And it's fluctuating. This has been looked at time after time over in the last 10 years, 5 or 6 times this has been reviewed. And everybody said, agreed. If you're looking at saving $700,000-$800,000, there's no doubt about it. you got to really look at it. But the savings is probably cost a little more. So the recommendation is, to keep it. You can always make the decision to keep it. You can only make the decision to get rid of it once, because once it's gone, because you'll never get another piece out. So, this goes way back, if you don't mind. This goes way back when the federal government came in and bought new 800 radios. And the city of Norwood wanted to get some of those 800 radios, and it was dispensed through the county. And the county said, if you come with us, we'll give them to you. Other than that, no. So we were out without 800 radios. And as it turned out, on a rainy Sunday morning, Carl Linder called my cell phone and said, Tom, we need to keep that. And he just turned around and bought those radios for us for about $250,000. But that was because the county, obviously, if we come on, it disperses the cost some. And they wanted us, and it was a total different people running at that time, and we were denied those radios. So, but now we've got Andy Knapp in there, and it's a much better relationship. It really is.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a few. Were our figures reviewed, our county figures here reviewed by anybody at the county as far as agreeing or disagreeing with the estimates we came up with?
The estimates, currently the county charges agencies who are dispatched by the county $15 for a call for service. So what we did is, the chief and I reviewed the numbers. We did we pulled the numbers that, based on what the county criteria was on a billable call for service, we came up with a number of calls that, based on last year's numbers, that would be billable, both for the fire department and for the police department. And we multiplied those calls times the $15 per call and came up with a number. In past, we had another review of our dispatch center for our calls for service. It was reviewed off of 2015 numbers. Those calls were sent to the county, and the county gave us that same $15 per call, did the math. I use that same formula. The numbers are very similar. So as far as what the cost would be, that's a very good estimate of what the low-end cost would be to pay the county for those calls for service. It doesn't include a lot of, the other day I was standing there, and one of the dispatchers told me, in the last hour I've had 25 calls on the landline that were transfer calls, where they wanted to talk to the chief, or they want to talk to the billing department, and those calls are also billable calls. So we can't count those calls, because currently our system does not count every call that comes in. But we get about 2,500 calls a month, based on some old numbers, of just landline calls coming into the center that have to be dealt with. And most of those, some of those are police runs, some are fire runs, some are people calling and asking silly questions like, what time's Halloween? We got a bunch of those, but some of those calls can be answered at random. If somebody calls and says, hey, what's the number for information, and a dispatch says it's 411, if the county were to answer that call, they wouldn't bill us for that, because if they knew the answer, or they could find the answer very quickly, they would not bill us that call. It's when we want those calls transferred, or it's a question that they can't answer and it requires somebody from Norwood to answer, they're going to bill us for those calls. Those calls, we can't come up with a number. We just know that those are above and beyond the numbers you have, and they can be it can be at any level. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, you had mentioned that the numbers we're using for call estimates, that you had to weed out some of those, and you said those are past data. Do you know what year that data's from?
Chief, we used 2017 numbers, right? We used 2017 numbers for the review.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and then the prior review, I think, was done off 2015 or 2016 numbers.
Okay. In the past, the assessments that were done, were they always kind of in this, did they always kind of look similar to this, where the county was
I don't have the
a
actual
little bit
numbers
higher?
from a lot of the past assessments. The assessment just before this one, the numbers were very similar.
Okay.
Well, one thing I believe the county up until a few years ago was $21 a run, I believe.
Yes.
So those numbers were even higher. The county found some kind of funding mechanism, I guess, that made it 15.
So the estimates between the two were significantly
Yeah.
larger in the past? I mean, the difference?
Yeah, because the county charged significantly higher than that.
Okay. Do we know what our cost per call is?
Well,
If we put everything in and say, all right, this is how much, I mean, you could probably do some quick and dirty math. I don't have
if we
a
wanted,
calculator with me, but to say that we spend this, we service this many calls, this is our cost per call.
no, because dispatch, part of the cost, if we were to go to county, includes keeping a certain amount of clerk operators to do the other tasks that are done throughout the day, warrant checks, entries, missing persons, all the data entry portion that the clerks actually do, the dispatchers actually do. So to say cost per call, we have to factor in the fact that if we went to the county, it's not $15 or $18 a call, because we've still got to maintain all this other service. So if you look at the two lines, there's keeping the PSAP numbers at 900-something thousand, and then switching to the county, some of the costs that we would have to still maintain have to be factored.
Right.
Just because the county can answer the call at, say, $18 a call for 2019, doesn't mean that that's their cost per call, because there's still all the services that the PSAP does
Might be
still
more.
have to be done.
Right. And
So-
and currently, the estimate that we provide for doing it in-house includes that extra work?
Yes,
That
includes every
administrative
bit.
work?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's why the 3 full-time, the 6 part-time are at the top for the personnel services under the county option.
Sure.
And that's a minimum.
see that.
We didn't pad that at all. That's one person to do the work, to do all the work that they do. And there's still going to be some calls they have to answer as part of that. We get 17,000 actual 911 calls. Was that the Cincinnati Bell numbers? 15,000. So we have 15,000 911 calls, and some of those calls could be on the same incident. You get an auto accident on the highway, people drive by, everybody's down 911, something like that. So if 15,000 actual calls come in, those calls would go to the county. The landline calls that would be answered, we do 2,500 a month on average, based on some 2017 numbers. Because we can't calculate the actual landline calls currently based on Cincinnati Bell's ability to calculate our calls. So we're using some numbers from 2017.
Also, when you do calls, isn't it possible you're charged twice because it's really a fire call and a police call?
Well,
Isn't that right, too?
We did factor that in, because the fire
Right.
calls
But-
were at
but
4,300.
they need to know, one call could be really 2 in one, right? It is my understanding.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yes, so it's not just a 1 per thing. If you have to dispatch both, you're charged for both, aren't you?
If you have to, if we were with the county automatically notifies or dispatches of police on every fire run. So that's
Correct.
why on the fire numbers, if they had 4,300, I think that was the right about numbers, that's doubled, because it's not $15 per fire call, because they notify the police, it's 30. So we calculated that, and that's in the figures.
That is in there.
Okay. Is there a reason, we mentioned, someone in the county said it's more likely going to be $2 a call or possibly $3 a call.
I called them myself, and he couldn't give me a true estimate. He said between 1 and 5. He thought at that time, and it's been a month ago, it is probably more likely going to be $2, but because he couldn't give me a true estimate, we went with the lower, and it was $1 that we increased it to 16.
Okay. I guess I'm wondering why we didn't put $2 in there.
All that would do is make this bigger, right? So-
Yeah, so
Well,
I wanted to go with.
I understand that, but
That
it
was
creates a
that
clearer
was
picture
my
if there's a
call.
bigger disparity if you use the
Yes.
best number you have.
That was
which
my
sounds
call,
like
though.
it-
If
yeah.
it was really $1, and so that would give you the lower end of what it potentially could cost them. So it's being a little more conservative in looking at things, and then mentioning, that's why the line's down there, that, it could be 1 to 5, and that's definitely going to show a huge increase between the two numbers. So,
Well, and they're recommending, the county commissioner's recommending $3 as of January 1st.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying we
didn't
made
pay
the
any of these
estimate
numbers.
their county estimate might look better. I mean, looks better this way, and it could be worse.
Right.
Well,
I'm
trust me,
saying if we're trying to lean towards one side, it's
Well,
we didn't,
let me-
kind of hurts the argument. Unless it was, well, if it ends up being one and not two, then it's like, well, I don't want to explain that kind of thing.
Well, let me address that because there's been so much information spread about this thing. Number one, somebody said, well, we're having civilian employees down here and we're inflating it by those. We could get rid of those and have the police do it. Really? We're short of police officers now. Now we want people's ideas to convert them to be clerks. Very expensive clerks. And then there was the issue of how many is it going to take, And if we come back and say $3 a call, we think it's going to go up $3 a call. And it comes back to $1. Well, you lied. You padded the numbers. So that's what we're dealing with,
Right.
On this crazy place called social media that, that stuff that's coming out. So it's more honest to come back and say it could be $1, but it could be worse. So rather than to pad the numbers, to really make it look bad, to embolden the case of keeping it, that necessarily wouldn't be honest. So by shooting low, if we're questioned,
Sure. You're covered.
that's right.
Yeah. Have we looked at all the 2020 budget of what it looks like, either the county, I don't know if they can say, well, the next 3 years, it looks like it's going to go up to $2 a year, and then also our 2020 budget of what we'd be looking at. Would it be very similar to the 2019, being that all things be the same and assuming the call count's the same, or?
We didn't do an estimate on 2020. That is not something even our office looked at. I will tell you the one thing that would increase that is in the recovery plan as of now would be the estimated cost on insurance increase, which is another 15%. Other than that, they still should not have a lot of equipment needs, and those should still stay down. So it should stay relatively about the same, except for the insurance costs and any staffing increases just by level of years that they've been there. So that would be the estimated increases that we would see. Now, potentially also, the wireless 911 monies that are coming in should and could increase too, depending on what some state laws that are going into effect, I think, as well. So the revenues could offset some of that as well. In the county, they were, not very, they would tell me what they were expecting for the following year, but going out after that, I don't know if we could get anything like that. So I'd say we'd have to say.
Anybody's guess.
It would probably be about the same, or it would have to increase. So that would be what we would know at this time.
Okay, thank you. Couple more things, and I promise, and then I'm done. How many calls, I was trying to determine how many calls you said that we get per year, per month. I heard 2,500, I heard 15,000. I guess, could you just clarify the quantity?
We have two ways the calls can come in. 911 through the 911 call counts, and then we have landline phones, which are just like, it's 4520, the in-house calls.
465.
The number you have to call when it's not an emergency.
Non-emergency, right.
Yes, so we got emergency lines and non-emergency lines. Non-emergency calls, we had about 15,000 of those come in. Not all of those were actual dispatched runs. Some of those were duplicates. Some of those were accidents or kids playing with phones. So that's the
non-emergency type
the
stuff.
911 lines is basically how we get our 911 fund, the money we get from the state.
Right.
So as those calls go up, it doesn't necessarily mean that those are everyone dispatched, but it also affects how our money comes in. So that's how that correlation is there.
Okay, so how many calls do we get for 911?
15,000.
Okay.
You said the non-emergency. You meant 911.
911. Did I say that?
Yeah, you said
Yeah.
it non-1.
Any more calls?
So it's 15,000.
15,000 911.
All right, and then how many of the other?
On the landline calls, in 2017, we were getting an average about 2,500 a month calls. Not all those were. We had 31,000 police calls for service, 4,300 fire. Is that about right? Somewhere in that range.
So we had, at least in 2017, 15,239 citizen-generated calls.
911.
Yes. And there was 5,347 police runs.
Fire runs.
I'm sorry, fire runs, yes. But, I mean, also keep in mind that dispatch also deals with almost 19,000 officer initiated runs, traffic stops, out with the subject, suspicious person. Now, county doesn't bill for those, but that is something that we have to.
Yeah, internal business type stuff. Okay. And the 465, 4520, maybe what time's the parade, what date is this?
Well, they
general information calls.
My house was broken into, they'll call that, the dog's barking, my husband's
Right.
beating me up.
I saw it.
You name it,
Yeah.
they call that number for everything. That's how they get the police and fire to come out. They call
Right.
it if they have an issue with Rumpke not picking up their trash, or if they want Public Works to come clean out a sewer. That's the number they call to reach the city. And that's so
kind of the general,
that's the number.
whatever
yeah.
you need kind of
If it's
number.
not
Okay.
911, that's the lines that we're counting. So 2,500 of those a month on average. I don't know what 18 numbers were. We'll be able to track those numbers in the future to give you a better understanding. And I'm not, so the cost of the equipment to keep the PSAP at this point, I'm not saying that in 3-4 years from now, something changes and costs go crazy, we reevaluate this again. But currently, right now, we have all the numbers calculated that we can, and they're in front of you. So I know that the state did pass part of the state's law that they passed recently talks about that counties can charge up to $0.25 per line, and that considers home phones, cell phones. So there's a substantial amount of potential for additional 911 funds to come into PSAPs. So at our current line is about $60,000 a year, $55,000 to $60,000 a year. That has a potential of increasing fairly severely that would cover a lot of costs down the road. But again, this is not a decision that's to be made for the rest of our lives. This is to get us through maybe this fiscal emergency and it's an ongoing evaluation of the program.
Facts change, you reevaluate.
Yeah.
Sure. And lastly, what benefit are we going to get by going to the cloud from a service or efficiency standpoint?
Okay, it's not 100% cloud. Cloud is part of all technology anymore.
Right.
Cincinnati Bell has the servers that handle our 911 program, the actual computer software. We have some of that here, basically what we call a switch, which is just how the lines come into the center. Individual would just handle what Cincinnati Bell's doing away with. Part of their system does have some redundancy built into it with the cloud. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know everything about the individual program and how they work. I've had numerous conversations with them on the redundancy matter, and I am very secure in the fact that between the hardware and the cloud-based redundancy that they have, that we're in very good shape. As far as it's a very strong, safe program, very technologically advanced. There's only two real main systems that you can go to, and that's the system the county uses and the city uses, or this individual program. Individual's the other guy, and I like them better, and not to mention they're also a whole lot cheaper. So the system, there's a lot of stuff that we have to work out still, but it's not necessarily all cloud-based. It's just
the redundancy piece of it?
Well,
I mean, is the process the same? They're still going to have the servers, but they're going to be backed up in the cloud?
There's no huge difference between the systems. It's just a lot of cloud, like we have cloud-based servers here in the city. I don't know how many we have. That'd be a question for TA Brown, but we have several cloud-based servers in the city, and it's just an easier way of doing it instead of hardware. We've got a couple hard servers, or actual, brick and mortar type servers in the city, and then if those were to go down, they would automatically revert to a cloud. So that's just another redundancy aspect of that system. So. Okay,
thanks.
Can I throw in one thing real quick? Mark, I want to talk about, so I don't get it wrong. For example, if we get a group of 911 calls coming in, for like an accident or fireworks or anything, and then somebody has a heart problem at the other end of town, that it'll show up.
But what you're referring to is the mapping software. It was explained to me, one of the reasons why I really love this new mapping software that we're looking at as part of this plan, it's actually, the cost is built in, they have a touchscreen ability. So when the calls come in, they come in as indicators on a map of the city on a computer. And if you get a cluster of calls on one incident on this side of the city, and it's inundating 911, you've got 30 people calling at once, and you're answering the phones, it's, the accident, the accident, the accident, the accident. You can look at this map and see that maybe there's a call coming from the northern part of the city, or an opposite side from where all these other calls are coming from, and you can answer that call directly. So it allows us to, and the example I use is you have an auto accident, tanker fire, huge fire on the highway, and everybody and their brother is calling 911. People from a mile away see smoke and they're calling 911. And then you've got this one little blip 911 call, and that's the person having a heart attack. So the new mapping software allows us to
put these
have
on hold and answer
dispatchers
that.
handle these calls and have somebody else grab that one, so we don't stack them in a tier and just answer them one after another.
Yeah, makes sense.
I wanted to just ask a quick question. Do you have any data on, in Hamilton County, the number of cities, villages that are using the county versus doing their own thing like you all are doing? Are there many?
There are 3 PSAPs in Hamilton County: Cincinnati Police, Hamilton County Sheriffs, and us. Used to be 4, Amberley Village used to be a PSAP. My understanding is they're doing away with their PSAP. Essentially, there's City of Cincinnati, there's us, and then Hamilton County represents, I believe it's 41 to 43 agencies. Everybody else. Those agencies also have to have a person answering the phones at their centers, but the 911 calls at least are being handled by Hamilton County.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you so much for being here today and helping us get a better understanding of this. In order to do this, as you can see from the analysis, the city needs to enter into a lease purchase agreement. And under the code that governs financial planning and supervision commissions, any debt has to be approved by the commission. So, and as we've heard, this is something that has some timeliness to it. So the city has considered this, and council has approved a resolution to enter into the equipment costs for 7 annual payments at about $31,000 a year. And that's what Anna Mary went over with us earlier. Yeah, that's built into this. So as a commission, we need to approve the entering into these arrangements then.
And the 31's locked for 7 years. It won't go up. Okay.
Yeah, it's locked. It's locked. So we need to approve a motion to enter into a lease purchase agreement for the purpose of financing the emergency communications equipment for public safety for Norwood. I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Sorry, was that you?
Yeah.
If we were to enter into this lease and a few years from now it shows that it's the dispatch is no longer a good decision, the county's a better decision, would that be a factor in determining that we wouldn't go to the county because we are locked into a lease that we'd have to buy out of? I guess 7 years seems like a long time, so I would hate to say, okay, we're kind of locked in for 7 years, and not have a chance to kind of look back, especially in the next 4 years, is when the 5-year budget's kind of up, so.
Go ahead and answer that. I don't know the answer. I'm making the motion in regards to the need for the city to have this equipment, and I think they have done due diligence in terms of understanding their options and what the various solutions are out there, and I think this makes sense. I agree, 7 years is a long time frame, particularly in telecommunications. But I'm comfortable with going ahead with this, and if it needs to be revisited, then the city, of course, would have that opportunity.
I guess, did you look at a 5-year lease? Does that increase the payment a month yearly, or how does that work? Did you guys look at different terms?
Reason why I did a 7-year lease, okay, first, the 7-year lease includes support and maintenance for the back 6 years. So the first year is included in the purchase of the equipment. Year 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, software and maintenance for all the systems that we're purchasing are included in that all-encompassing 7-year purchase at $31,000. So it's not $188,000 that if you at the year 3 decide, we've all of a sudden decided we want to go to the county, it wouldn't be that you'd have to eat 4 more years of $31,000, because that service and support would then go away and it wouldn't be needed. You understand that? Okay, so, and then part of it is there are systems that the text to 911, the mapping system, the equipment is smaller. The equipment needs are smaller on those, and the support is larger. So that it's not 188. I don't know what the equipment cost itself is, but that's spread out over 7 years because my goal initially was to keep the cost very low. We pay $17,000 a year to Cincinnati Bell for support for the service plan. We own our equipment, and we pay them $17,000 to supply us with 911 calls. We pay about $3,500 to $4,000 for the mapping service part of it. That also goes away. So that's about $21,000 that we're paying now that goes away, and then we're picking up $31,000. So essentially, from what we're doing now, it's about $10,000 more a year to get all brand new and updated and bright and shiny, plus the 911 and other benefits. I don't know if year 5 and we've got $30,000 worth of equipment still to pay for, that they'll take it back and trade, or we can sell it to somebody else. But ultimately, what we're saying is, okay, we're cheaper now at $15 a run. It's going up potentially $3. The 911 account that we're going to get funds in to the city is going to go up. So we're thinking if we've got maybe $50,000 worth of equipment 3 years from now that we might have to still pay for. So we've got it has to get a reverse of several $100,000 in order to make that a cost-effective scenario. So I don't see it in 3 to 4 years being an issue. I see it maybe in 10 years being an issue, because I'm out. Does that kind of help answer the question a little bit?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we have a motion on the floor to enter into this lease purchase agreement, and it's been seconded.
Yep.
Call the roll. Yeah, let's call the roll.
How many votes do we need, and who's voting?
All the commission members who are here, so there's six votes, at least 6 votes,
Okay. And you need how many to pass it?
a majority.
Mayor Williams?
Yes.
Council President Lake? Yes. Mr. Schwartz?
Can you come back to me?
Sure. Mr. Shepherd? Oh, he's not here. Sorry, Mr. Vonderhaar?
Yes.
Ms. Longenecker?
No.
Ms. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz?
I think I'll abstain.
So there are 4 in favor, 1 abstention, and 1 no.
Okay. So the motion is passed for the equipment. Okay. It's a big discussion. Thank you. Through that. Thank you for your work, Henry. Also on our agenda today, we have with us Dr. William Kramer, who has put together the fire department facility study. If you'd like to come forward, Dr. Kramer. The commission received your report. I'm hoping that you've had a chance to look at that. I know it's the hour that it is, but we're glad you could make it to be here with us. If you want to give a few introductory pieces about the report as you put it together, and then any questions that people have?
Sure. Well, I greatly appreciate the chance to be here. I applaud everything being done. It's a fantastic, resilient city and an absolutely highly talented fire department that I got to work with. And my report did a complete audit of the fire department staffing, apparatus, equipment, training, the national standards for response. We did a mapping analysis in terms of time and distance. And in the end, I had to look at what's the deciding factor on whether or not the fire department should be staffed at a higher level than they are currently. I know the local union has bargained for and wanted to get a minimum of 13 people on duty. They wanted a complement of about 51, I believe it is. And in the end, the amount of people on duty is a function of how much money is available. That's the ultimate deciding factor. I know Chief Wallace would like to see a needs study. What do we really need? And then it'll be up to the city to find a way to pay for it. But unfortunately, that just does not work. That there is a limiting factor. The city of St. Bernard, are one of our first arriving mutual aid partners here in Norwood, used to have 9 people on duty every day. They had Ivory Dale. They now have 6 people on duty every day. Why? What do they need? They certainly need probably 9 or more, but they can only afford 6. So ultimately, it comes down to what can you afford? Affordability is a term that a union leader and a fire chief probably doesn't want to hear, but I'd be willing to accept any synonym for that. It does come down to that. Now, as Mayor Williams pointed out, some neutral third party can come in and decide differently. They can do a fact-finding or an arbitration and say, we think that the union makes a good case that their contract numbers should be upheld. And therefore, the city will have to probably find a way. But if there is no money, it would be like getting a judgment in an auto accident against somebody else who was at fault, caused injury to you. But if they have no money and they have no insurance, there is going to be a collection there. It's kind of like getting an award for something when there is no funding available. So ultimately, my report shows that I think for now I'd like to see the fire department stabilized. I believe I put a lot of faith in the numbers and facts and figures I got, and I figured that April and Mariana are the two that ultimately had the exact numbers I had to go by when I looked at all the facts and figures. I certainly applaud the quality work that the union is doing, that the fire department is doing, and I would like to see their number go from 11 to 12 on duty every day, but I would like to see the maximum reduced if possible, spread it out so there's a more even number on duty every day. It goes from 11 to 15 right now, and if there are ways to spread out the vacation days or some other ways, and we've pointed out some of those techniques in our report, how that could be done. I think that could be done quickly, and the local union has offered a way with no additional overtime to go to 12. I think I'd like to see the city engage in those dialogues to get that done relatively quickly. Ultimately, my report also would like to see a 24-hour chief officer in charge of the fire department on duty every day. And that doesn't mean 3 new chief officers. I think you can absorb some of the 40-hour duties that are being performed now and combine those with a command presence every day. And I show a time frame of trying to get to that within 10 years. But this is not a fiscal, this is a fiscal emergency. It's not a fictional emergency. So I do believe in the need for stabilizing with the existing finances. And I think in my report, I think I agree with the fire department. What they would need probably is more than what they have, but they cannot have the funding. There is not the funding there at this time. I do point out ways to try to get to what the fire department would like to have, and there's some agreement there. So I applaud this group for keeping the fiscal house in order, and your priorities are evidently in order. My invoice was paid quickly, so thank you. And with that, I'll entertain any questions you might have.
When you looked at other communities, did the staffing levels seem to be comparable?
I did. We studied similar populated communities, and the average number on duty for those communities was a little more than 7.3. 3, I believe it is. And some of those communities are similar to Norwood in terms of density.
And we have 11, is that what you said?
We have 11 minimum.
Okay.
The other cities have 7. And they would like to have more. Some of my rural clients say we need more people because we have grain silos and we have tanker shuttles and not enough people to run them, but they can only afford 3 to 5 people on duty, some of them. So everybody would like to have more. But it really does come down to, let's stabilize what we have. I think the 85% rule we discussed earlier makes sense, and then build toward better numbers as it becomes more fiscally possible.
So you said your report kind of outlines ways to do more with less, essentially, right? So to try to, whether it's changing around how overtime works, or so it sounds like it kind of points us in some areas that we could possibly improve on to kind of get us halfway, maybe. Yeah.
I think so, and I think a good dialogue between the firefighters and the city would help go in that direction.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Dr. Kramer at this point?
I guess. Okay.
I was going to say, just given the number that you've seen in other similar areas with similar densities, 7 versus our current staffing, do you draw, I know you said 12 is kind of the better number. I guess, can you speak to they have 7, we have 11, maybe we can afford 11, maybe we can't, maybe they can afford 7 and that's it. I mean, that's a significant percentage of more people. What are your thoughts on that as an expert, just between those two?
I like to see all governmental services in balance. And in some of those communities, they're perhaps understaffed because there's too much money placed in other positions. I don't see that here in Norwood. And Norwood, the Public Works Department once had 125 employees. They privatized waste collection. I believe Joe told me they're down to 15 employees correctly. I know the roads need repair. I know the fire equipment is not up to replacement schedule standards. So the firefighters on duty compete with many other factors, including their own equipment needs. And I believe in more of a balance. So why do they have 7 and Norwood have 11? A lot of it's based on historical precedent and what's been affordable in the past. And that really is what it comes down to. The dangers, some of those cities that I compare them with are places like Euclid Heights and some surrounding Cleveland that are similar in population and not almost as dense as Norwood, with some of the same hazards and same types of buildings. Whitehall near Columbus is similar in many ways. But there is one department that has 11 on duty. I believe it's Chillicothe, but they make about 9,000 runs a year and serve areas outside their city.
How many runs a year do we make?
Last time it was Chief McCabe, your annual runs.
Last year was 5,400 runs. We're on pace to do about 6,000 this year.
6,000. If anybody has follow-up questions, I have a name and number on these little pens. They write in soft blue ink. I left some of them on the table, and if anybody else has follow-up questions, feel free to call at any time.
Thank you.
Okay.
So how do we use this then, Mayor? I mean, what's the next step, I guess? Is this used in the negotiations with the unions, I guess, or how's it?
It could be.
Yeah.
Part of the problem was in the past, we don't know, I'm not the expert, we don't, so the idea was, I believe council or somebody said, maybe we should do some studies.
Yeah, I remember.
And so that's what we did. There's one in progress for the police department now, and we, when we spoke to Mr. Kramer and he was received well. It's kind of touchy when you have an expert come in and he's evaluating the police department or fire department. When he goes into that department, you'd think, okay, they're going to be a little skeptical of him, but he was received well. He's well respected, and the relationship, as the way I understand it, he was treated well, and that shows a professionalism on his part plus the fire department. So we're going to do the same thing with the police department. It can be used in several ways. It can be used to explain to the public. It can be used to explain in negotiation. It can be used to explain a number of things. Because what I think is, it doesn't make a hill of beans. I base it on, I would be basing it on a guess. Right now, we're making decisions strictly on what Mr. Kramer said. It's a financial deal. That's why I said at the very beginning, these decisions are being made on a financial deal. That's what we have to look at. Would I like to see more? Would I like to see Of course we would. But we can't get out of this and continue on the way we're going. So it's as simple as that. But he was received well, and I think that's a compliment not only to the fire department, but Mr. Kramer.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kramer, for rearranging your schedule to join us.
I'm happy to do it.
Appreciate
I
it.
like coming to Norwood. People will hear wave at you with all 5 fingers.
Yeah? Well, that's according to who you are. I don't get that reception.
All right. We are getting close to 1 o'clock here, but Mayor, you're next on the agenda for a report. I know you've offered some observations earlier, but I don't know if you have anything else.
I think everybody's had enough with me, but I had, basically what I was telling you was sort of like out of frustration. We're doing what we can to match the goals and the recovery of this city, knowing that it's crucial that we do that. And we're following the plans and everything else. The problem of it is people look at us and say, well, it's just you guys. Well, no, we're trying to follow the plan. And when I would like numbers and I would like this, I would like to see the state correct that 4117 and 138. So, there's some division there because you can't do it and I can't do it, but it's just a problem. And now that we've got support and the numbers could be coming to help us plan for the negotiations, telling us what we got to work with, it would help. I appreciate it. I think we've made some progress on understanding where everybody wants to be. I think, it's a work in progress trying to figure out how we're going to get there. So besides this, I'm always available. If you see something or you hear something, then call me and ask me. I'll be more than happy to tell you.
Report of City Council President.
Well, obviously, we looked at the 911 system and had several meetings in regard to that, so I'm not going to rehash that. Council did pass the ordinances and the resolutions in anticipation of sending them to you. My big thing that I've been working on is I've taken this personally to make sure that the retirees healthcare system, the new retirees healthcare system is transitioned to a new vendor. The city received a letter dated September 17th from Benovation informing us that they were getting out of the third-party administration business. So not only us, but they're getting out of it with everyone, and you're laughing because they don't do it very well. You question the viability of that. They're still doing the insurance business, but not third-party administration. So in addition to all of the other stuff that was going around of the changes to the retirees healthcare system, we needed to find somebody else to be the third-party administrator. So I am happy to report that a local company, S&S Healthcare Systems, has agreed to do this service. Apparently, Benovation was unable to keep up with a lot of the data entry and things, and so when Benovation told us, well, we had this old system at the beginning of the year, and now in March or April we moved to a new computer system. That new system was S&S on the back end. So this S&S Healthcare they were subcontracting with S&S Healthcare to develop the new software system. So it made sense for us to transition to them, to the S&S, since they have all of the data, they have the computer system. I can tell you that in the past, Benovation charged us $32 per person per month to administer that program. The S&S Healthcare system, if I read the contract correctly, looked like $8.50 per retiree per month. Now, that was listed twice, so there, it may be $16 or maybe $17. I haven't, this has just been recently signed. So at any rate, it's going to be a substantially less cost per month to administer the program. When I mailed out all of the information to the current retirees on the list, I found several people who were dead that we had been paying for a number of months. So we will be certainly saving money on that end. It's hard sometimes for people when they live out of town that we don't know that they've passed away, but as we became aware of people locally, we certainly let Benovation know that. We were billed for 2 or 3 people that had recently passed away, that Benovation was informed on that, and they continued to bill us, and so I have requested that they send us refunds for those couple of months. When some of the checks went out, this is just some of the things that I want you to understand that we've been dealing with. When some of the payments went out to some of the retirees, I found out that 6 of those checks bounced. The person at Benovation who was entering the information into their system to pay the checks transposed the last 2 numbers of the account. And so 6 people received checks, deposited them, wrote checks, paid bills based upon that happening, and incurred charges for that. I am happy to report to you that those have been replaced, and any charges that were associated with those bounced checks have been reimbursed by Benovation, not by us. But I apologize to the folks who had to go through that humiliation of being in a Kroger store and using your debit card and saying that you don't have money in your account. So it's been, it's really been interesting. So our contract with Benovation expired yesterday. We are now with the SNS healthcare system. They are in the process of, we do have a contact at SNS that people can contact individually. So there's somebody assigned to Norwood. We are they're in the process of sending me a welcoming letter and a claim form so that people who have claims for the rest of this year can submit those claims. In the past, we had in our contract that people had 2 years to submit medical claims, and we've changed that to a year. So we're only doing a contract with these people for the 2 months in 2018, and then all of 2019 for claims that are incurred to December 31st of 18. Does that make sense? And then in January 1st of 2019, the new plan goes into effect, where people will fill out a 1-page application. We verify that they have met the terms of the new healthcare plan, that they were hired prior to January 1st, 1975. They've worked for the city for 20 years. Once we verify that, we send the information to the auditor's office. They send a check one time, and we're done. There's none of this other nonsense that people, I cannot imagine these retirees having to have dealt with this company for the number of years they have, just in the 2 years that I have been personally involved with trying to get this mess straightened out. So I want to make sure that every retiree gets every penny that's due to them. So that's another work in progress. In addition, there was a stop-loss plan that covered any expenses over $10,000 per employee, per retiree. That was a substantial amount of money that we paid every month for that coverage. When I did the research on that, I found out that there had been no claims against that for about 2.5 or 3 years. So that expired on 10/31 as well. And so based with that information and confirming that there had been no claims against that, the city council chose not to renew that contract for the next 2 months. So we saved $22,000 per month. So for the months of November and December, there will be $44,000 that we are not paying for the stop loss, and hope that we don't get hit with huge claims. But we haven't had any in the last 3 years, so we don't anticipate that that's going to happen.
So do we have insurance again for that starting January 1?
It doesn't happen after that. We've done away with that plan. So by doing away with the old retirees' health care plan, we don't need that anymore.
Okay, understood. Okay.
Yeah, so we've done away with that Millennium Plan, we've done away with the C9 Trust. What we're doing is a new retirees healthcare plan where they'll get one lump sum every year. So there's no need for the stop-loss coverage, there's no,
Where does this, it started at 10 grand?
I think it was anything over 10,000 per year.
Okay. So it's nothing else?
So there will be some substantial savings to the city.
Okay.
There are still some outstanding claims that we're going to be on the hook for, obviously. People haven't been reimbursed for everything that they've submitted. They still have November and December for claims, but, so we'll still have expenses in that regard. But starting January 1st, 2019, our liability decreases substantially. So-
You would still have a liability to pay for up to a year, because they have a year to pay, to send in the claims. This is why you're with the company through 2019, correct? So after 2020, you shouldn't see, if you're starting in 2020, you shouldn't see anything from that.
No, that's correct.
So does our risk stop at calendar year, or does it last another 12 months?
Well, the risk, I mean, I assume that,
If they have another year to make claims, I'm saying that's a risk, right? So it's only $10,000, right?
it's anything over 10,000, but they have to have, this is in this current plan, if they are members of OPERS, Ohio Public Employees Retirement System, or Police and Fire Pension, they have to have that insurance. And then if they're over 65, they have to be on Medicare. So technically, we are the third-party payer. There are very few people who are under age 65 that are currently in the plan.
So you said in 15 was the last time there was a claim against it? How much was the claim?
I don't know.
I was wondering, I mean, if something, sounds like we're third on the totem pole, but are we opening ourselves up to significant risk if something major happens that, yeah, we save 60 grand of premiums, but one big accident happens or something and we're on the hook for hundreds of thousands of dollars? Is that possible?
I guess it is, and it's possible.
I take my medicine every day.
Okay.
So I'll try
when
not
are
to
the
raise your
claims
risk.
incurred cut off? Is that yesterday? So it had to be a claim that was incurred but not submitted until over the next 14 months?
No, so the new plan doesn't go into effect until January 1st, so it can be claims through the end of this year.
Okay.
Yep. And I can tell you that the Haran, a person from Haran, who does our insurance analysis and things like that, it was her recommendation that we not renew that, that she thought that our exposure was minimal. She suggested taking the $22,000 premium that we would pay in November and December, put it in an escrow account in the event that we had some exposure or some claims. I don't know if that can be done, but there'll be a $44,000 savings at any rate for the last 2 months of this
That's what
year.
I was thinking, just in case.
Yep.
Anything else with your report?
No, it's been all consuming, trust me.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, well, thank you very much. Thank you for keeping us abreast on that. We need to think about meeting one more time in calendar year 18, and we're looking at December 4th. If that
What day is that?
will work.
Tuesday.
Yeah. At 11:30,
It's fine for me.
is that okay? All right, let's put that on our calendars then, and that'll be our final meeting for 18. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Mercy, second.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned at 1:08. Thanks for your patience on this today. Covered a lot of ground.